Hi, I'm Arlena. My own family stole $19,000 from me for a luxury vacation I wasn't invited to. Then they had the nerve to say, "You can still come, just cover your own costs." No apology, just entitlement and laughter behind my back. I didn't scream, I didn't beg. I filed a fraud report against all of them. And when the truth finally came out, they couldn't spin a single word. But it wasn't just the money they took. It was the last piece of me that still believed they loved me. Before we dive in, what time are you listening to this, and where from? Drop it in the comments. Have you ever been betrayed by your own family and stayed silent? I'd been up since 5 watching the clock tick as I wrapped the last of the keychains and packed a thermos of coffee for the road. My parents hated being late. Even for vacations they didn't invite me on. By 6:15 I pulled up to their house. The porch light was on, but no one came out to greet me. I texted Mom a minute later. She opened the front door. Her robe still cinched tight around her waist. "You're early," she said, as if that were a bad thing. I said I'd be here by 1:15. I replied, forcing a smile. Inside, Dad shuffled in socks, dragging 2 carry-ons. Sophie stood at the top of the stairs in a cream sweater dress, phone in one hand, roller suitcase in the other. Mike's voice carried from somewhere in the back. "Zane, come on, man. We're going to miss the flight I offered to help, but no one took me up on it." I ended up holding the front door while they filed out one by one, like I was the doorman. The car ride to John Wayne was barely 15 minutes, but it felt like an hour. They talked the whole time, just not to me. Sophie showed Mom a reel she was editing. "If this one hits over 50K, the resort might comp our next stay." Mom gasped, like she'd been told Sophie cured cancer. "I told you were meant for bigger things than selling condos to divorcees." Dad chuckled. "As long as we get a beachfront room with AC, that works this time." Mike leaned forward from the back. "Hey babe, did you bring the drone? Gotta get that wide-angle footage." "No," Sophie said, smirking. "But I packed the bikini." "You like?" They laughed. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. Zane sat behind me, AirPods in. I doubt he even realized I was the one driving. At the terminal, I parked near the Southwest drop-off. Everyone spilled out like clockwork. Each person knowing their role, I handed Dad his suitcase. He nodded but didn't look at me. Then Mom turned. "What are those shoes?" I glanced down. "Just a pair of gray flats. Nothing fancy but comfortable." "You still dress like a teacher from 2009, she muttered. I swallowed it. "I made something," I said, pulling the little package from my coat pocket. "For all of you," I handed them the gift bag, simple craft paper. Inside were 4 hand-woven keychains, each shaped into a tight sailor's knot, dyed blue and gold. A small tag was attached. "Even knots have their purpose." Mom pulled one out and raised a brow. "Huh?" Mike tilted his head. "Is this a riddle?" Sophie took. Hers smirked. "Cute, but we don't really do keychains." She dropped it back into the bag. "You can just leave these in the car." No one said thank you. Then, like salt in an open wound, Sophie turned to me and said, "You should have just booked a flight, Arlena. Maybe next year you'll figure out how to plan ahead." I didn't answer. My hands were shaking, but I kept them low, tucked into my sleeves. I hugged Zane. He barely pulled out 1 AirPod. "Have fun," I said. He nodded and looked away. Dad gave me a one-armed squeeze, already scanning the line. Mike slapped my shoulder like a buddy at a bar. Mom gave me the quickest cheek kiss. "Don't forget to water my beonas." Then they were gone. I walked back to the car, slid into the driver's seat, and just sat there. I didn't cry. I didn't even breathe deep. I stared at the gift bag on the passenger seat and thought, even knots have their purpose, huh? I drove home in silence. The roads were clear, the sky overcast. Perfect weather for being invisible. That afternoon, still in the same clothes, I opened my banking app to transfer some money for groceries, and then I froze. My balance looked wrong. Really wrong. The numbers didn't lie, but what they implied. My hands began to shake. I didn't even take my shoes off when I got home, just walked straight into the kitchen, dropped my keys on the counter, and heated up the last of the chicken tortilla soup I'd made earlier in the week. The house was quiet. Too quiet, if I'm being honest. I sat at the dining table, bowl of soup steaming, my coat still on. My phone buzzed with a calendar reminder about a parent-teacher conference I no longer had to attend. I swiped it away. Then, mostly out of habit, I tapped into my banking app. I wasn't expecting anything dramatic. Maybe a pending charge from Trader Joe's or a few subscription renewals. But there it was, one line. Then another, a charge for $443 from Mahanae Travel Group. Another for $2.90 from Resort Hanabe Maui. And then one labeled VIP Concierge Intel 1. $275. I blinked, stared harder. Maybe I'd been logged into an old account. Or maybe I was reading it wrong, but the totals were real. I scrolled further. Another charge, Hibiscus Spa Upgrade. $670. Then Sunset Snorkel Excursion, Private Luau, and a restaurant tab from La Mer Honolulu. All of them clustered over the past 72 hours. All of them charged to a backup credit card I hadn't used in years. It didn't make sense until I saw the email linked to the itinerary, Sophie.Mr's hand and day cloud. Calm, I pushed my chair back. My soup sat untouched. It hit me like a slap to the face. That card, my second Chase card, I had given it to Sophie once years ago. She'd been in a panic about Dad's sudden hospital visit and said she might need to book flights or cover costs before things were reimbursed. I'll cut it up after, I swear. She had said it's just in case anything ever happens to Mom or Dad. And I need to move fast. I never asked for it back. And like most people raised in guilt and politeness, I never followed up. I clicked the card details tab. My name was still on the card, my address, my phone number, but the transactions, they were for them. My family, I hit the number to call the bank. The hold music looped for 3 minutes, something smooth and vaguely Hawaiian. Fitting, I guess. A woman answered. This is Kelly at Chase. How can I assist you today? I inhaled sharply. Hi, I'm calling to report unauthorized charges on one of my cards. It's a backup account, I don't use it. Okay, I can help with that. Best. You verify the last 4 digits on the card in question. I did. She clicked away on her keyboard. All right. I see a few large transactions in the last few days. Are those what you're referring to? Yes, I said I didn't make them. I didn't authorize them. Got it, I'll begin a fraud report for you and we'll investigate those transactions. Just to clarify, were any of these purchases made by someone, you know, or with your permission? My throat dried out. I lent the card years ago to my sister. I said, for an emergency, but I never gave her permission to use it now. Not for a family vacation I wasn't even invited to. I understand, the rep said gently. The charges were made online, using your full billing info. They started 3 days ago. We'll have to treat this as unauthorized use unless you specify otherwise. I shook my head, though she couldn't see it. It wasn't me. I didn't say yes. File the report, she paused. Okay, just so you're aware, this may lead to a formal inquiry. In some cases, if the card holder and the person using the card are known to be related, it could involve further investigation. You may want to notify your family before things escalate. I didn't answer, ma'am. I heard you, I whispered, but in truth, I barely did. I was staring out the window by then, not really seeing anything. Just the bare branches outside the quiet street. The cloudy sky heavy with something it hadn't released yet. I could still hear Sophie's voice in my head from this morning. Maybe next year you'll learn to plan ahead. And there it was. She had planned. She'd planned this whole trip, flights, rooms, massages, upgrades, and used my name to pay for it. Not even sneakily, boldly, like it was hers to use, like I didn't matter. My fingers curled tighter around the phone until my knuckles ached. I stared at the untouched bowl of soup, then slowly got up and dumped it down the sink. I wasn't hungry anymore, not for food anyway. That night I made myself a cup of peppermint tea, hoping it would calm the storm building in my chest. Turned off the overhead lights, leaving only the soft amber glow of the lamp beside the couch. I stared at my phone screen for what felt like an hour, my thumb hovering over my mother's name in my contacts. My dinner had long gone cold on the coffee table, untouched since the moment I saw those charges from Maui. I told myself maybe there was an explanation. Maybe the bank got it wrong. Maybe Sophie didn't mean to use the card. Maybe my family hadn't decided I was disposable. I hit call it. Rang 3 times before her voice chirped through the line like nothing had happened. "Oh, honey, you finally called," she said like I was the one who disappeared for a week with someone else's money. I was just about to post more pictures from the beach. Wait till you see the sunset tonight. It's unreal. I didn't return the enthusiasm, Mom. She paused. What's wrong? I steadied my voice. Did you use my credit card? The silence on the other end lasted only a beat, but it said everything. Then she laughed. Light, airy, practiced. Oh, sweetheart, why are you always so dramatic? My grip on the phone tightened. Mom, that card was for emergencies. You remember that, right? You never use it. It's just been sitting there for years. Her tone had shifted now, still light but with an edge. Besides, it was for the family. You know, how expensive everything's gotten lately. Mom, I said again, slower this time. It was over $19,000. She let out a scoff, like I'd said something ridiculous. Will you work in tech? You always talk about how well things are going. What's a little vacation to you? We didn't think it'd be a big deal. I blinked, stunned into silence. From somewhere in the background, I heard Sophie's voice. She wasn't even whispering. Tell her she's still invited if she wants to come. Linda jumped on it. Yes, you can still come, Arlena. If you want to join us, you just need to cover your own flights and hotel now. This one's non-refundable, you know? I couldn't speak. My jaw was clenched so tightly it hurt. Why do you always make things so negative, she added, as if she hadn't just acknowledged taking my money, and then asking me to buy my own way. We were trying to do something special as a family. You're part of this family, right? I stared ahead at the darkened TV screen, my own reflection faint and unfamiliar. Then I said quietly, you just answered my question. I ended the call without waiting for her reply. I sat still for a moment longer. Not crying, not shaking, just still. There was a kind of quiet that came with certain kinds of betrayal. Not rage, not even sadness. Just a deep-cutting understanding that something had broken and it wouldn't be put back together. I set my phone down, then reached for my laptop. I opened the email thread with the fraud team from the bank. Subject are suspicious charges on secondary card ending in 4220. Message, hi, yes please. Proceed with the formal fraud investigation. Attached are screenshots of the charges as well as the itinerary, with linked names. Linda Murphy, mother, Sophie Murphy, sister, and Zane Murphy, father. The card was used without my knowledge or consent. Thank you, Arlena Murphy. I clicked. Send, then closed the laptop slowly. Out the window, I could see the lights of Costa Mesa blinking steadily. Traffic humming in the distance, somewhere across the Pacific. My family was sipping cocktails on a balcony I paid for. And for the first time in years, I wasn't angry, I was done. That night I sat on my living room floor, legs curled under me, the TV humming in the background, but offering no real comfort. The shadows shifted across the walls as the sun dipped past the horizon, leaving behind the last warm tones of daylight. My phone lay screened down on the couch cushion beside me. For the first time in years, it wasn't buzzing with family group chats, fake check-ins, or passive-aggressive emojis from Sophie. 2 days passed, in a kind of quiet I didn't know I needed. The fridge was full. Take-out frozen meals, random snack packs I bought in a frustrated grocery run. After the call with Mom, I'd told myself I deserved to eat whatever I wanted to, not care. But the truth was I hadn't touched most of it. The boxes sat unopened like strange trophies of defiance and grief. Tuesday morning, I woke up early not because I had work, but because my chest wouldn't let me sleep in. The Zoom call with the fraud investigator was at 9. I'd already checked the time. Twice, I moved slowly, brushing my teeth, pulling on a plain sweater and pinning my hair back. More out of routine than vanity. No makeup, just me. That felt right today. At 8:58, I sat down at my dining table and opened the laptop. The waiting room message flashed. Detective Erickson will join shortly. I let out a long breath and rubbed my hands together. Not from nerves exactly, but something colder. Something that felt like awareness. The screen shifted. Good morning, Miss Thorne, came a calm voice. The detective was in his mid-50s, graying hair, thick glasses, the kind of presence that made people sit up straighter. "Good morning," I said, managing a polite nod. He adjusted his headset. "Thanks for making time. We've reviewed your preliminary report, and I just have a few follow-up questions before we move it forward." I know these conversations can be tough, especially when they involve family. I gave a small smile that didn't reach my eyes. "That's putting it mildly right. Let's start with the documentation I have, the screenshots, transaction list, and itinerary you sent. Everything seems to line up. I just need clarification on one thing that stood out." He clicked something off screen, and I heard the faint rustle of papers. "This booking," he said, tapping his pen on something. "It wasn't just paid using your card, it was made under your name. Full profile, same account you used for your last business trip. Miami last November." I blinked. "Wait, are you saying they booked it through my travel profile?" He nodded slowly. "Yes, and more than that, the terms and conditions were digitally accepted with your saved signature on file." My stomach dropped. "They used my digital ID, correct?" he said gently. "That elevates this beyond unauthorized use. What we're seeing here qualifies as identity theft. Whoever did this not only charged your card, they impersonated you in a legally binding transaction." I sat back, breath catching in my throat. The air in the room felt tighter, but they're my family, I understand. And you wouldn't be the first person to hesitate for that reason. But the law doesn't care if the perpetrator is your neighbor or your mother. I looked down at the edge of my laptop, fingers curling into the sleeves of my sweater. He continued, his voice firm, but not unkind. "We take cases like this seriously, because the breach of trust makes them harder, not easier. Would you like to proceed with formal charges for a second?" I couldn't answer. My mind flicked back months ago. Sophie had laughed while I struggled with the hotel's Wi-Fi login and had leaned over, peeking at my phone. "What's your password again? You always use something cheesy, right? Like blueberry something." I'd waved her off, too tired to argue. She always joked like that. Always crossed lines and expected me to shrug it off. That line didn't seem funny anymore. I looked up. "Yes," I said, "I want to move forward." Detective Erickson gave a short nod. "Understood. I'll mark the report for felony-level fraud. You'll receive a confirmation email shortly, along with the next procedural steps. There may be a court summon depending on how it escalates." "Thank you," I said softly. After the call ended, I closed the laptop slowly. Almost ceremonially. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just sat still for a long minute. Then came a gentle chime from my phone, a message. "Melanie, hey, checking in." "You okay?" I stared at the screen, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Then I typed, "Yeah, I think I'm finally waking up." I hit send. Then I stood up, walked over to the fridge, and started tossing everything out one container at a time. Not out of anger, just clarity. The kind that comes when you realize you've been feeding yourself stories that never really nourished you. I thought reporting them would bring guilt. What I didn't expect was relief. And that quiet relief stayed with me like a still tide, constant lapping at the edges of my thoughts without demanding anything. No shouting, no guilt-tripping voicemails. No, we're family arena. How could you just silence? And for once, it felt like peace. That Thursday morning, the air outside my condo carried the kind of coastal stillness that only shows up before something breaks loose. I stood in my robe by the mailbox cluster, coffee cups still warm in one hand. Junk flyers, a real estate newsletter, a coupon for car washes I'd never use. And then one envelope stood out crisp white. No window in dark blue ink, bank fraud division. I stared at it for a long second before sliding my finger under the flap and pulling out the contents. My hands weren't shaking, but my heart. It was doing this slow, hollow thump, like it was waiting to be proven right or wrong. The letter was clear, formal. This notice confirms that a formal fraud investigation has been initiated regarding charges made to your Bank of Barrage account ending in 71 due to preliminary findings. A temporary hold has been placed on all connected cards and sub-accounts pending review. You will be contacted if further verification is required. Connected cards, sub-accounts. They weren't just charging my card. They were tied to it like leashes. I sat on the edge of the hallway, planter letters still in my lap, watching the morning light shift across the sidewalk cracks. So this was happening officially. My family, my own flesh and blood, was now the subject of a felony investigation. I didn't feel victory. Not yet. What I felt was a return of ownership of self. Meanwhile, somewhere in Maui, a hotel phone rang twice in a sun-soaked suite overlooking the ocean. Linda was adjusting her sunglasses when Sophie picked it up, expecting a call from the concierge, maybe about spa appointments or room service. But the voice on the other end wasn't soft or playful. It was clipped professional. Good morning, this is Kai Martin, General Manager of Hail Moana. We've received a notice from the Bank of Bay's legal division regarding the account tied to the reservation under Arlena Becker. Sophie blinked. Yes, that's my sister. Ma'am, the manager replied gently. We've been advised that the cardholder has reported unauthorized use. Until we receive direct verification from the cardholder, all resort services under that booking are temporarily suspended. Linda sat up fast, pulling her sunglasses off. What the hell are they talking about? Sophie turned away from the lounge chair and cupped the phone. It's something about the card they need her to verify. Linda snatched the phone from her. Listen, there's clearly been a misunderstanding. My daughter isn't some scammer. Her sister let us use her info. This is just a family trip. But the manager's voice remained unchanged. I understand, however, without direct authorization from Ms. Becker, we are unable to continue providing services on this reservation. You're welcome to provide an alternate method of payment to resolve your balance. What balance? Sophie squeaked. Currently, room charges total $4.97. 049, not including incidental holds. The silence on their end was thick. Sophie looked around the pool deck like the chairs and umbrellas might swallow her whole. Linda's voice dropped. Let me make a call. This will be resolved. But back in my living room, my phone buzzed. A Maui number I didn't recognize, ignored, then a second buzz. This time, a text from Linda. No hello, no. Can we talk? Just what the hell did you do? I stared at the message. Then without hesitation, I pressed and held the thread until the option appeared, block this caller. Done. No explanations, no justifications. I owed them nothing. Later that afternoon, as the sun warmed the floorboards in stripes across my living room, I got a follow-up email from the resort. Thank you, Ms. Becker, for confirming the charges were not authorized. The guests under the reservation have been notified of the outstanding balance and informed that further services are on hold. We appreciate your swift response. I sat back. Let the words soak in. I didn't smile, not quite. But a deep breath came easier. There was no need for revenge. This was justice in its cleanest, quietest form. I microwaved the leftover pasta I hadn't touched the night before and actually ate this time, slowly watching the window, feeling like the first layer of something thick and suffocating had been peeled off. Later that night, I changed the sheets, lit a lavender candle, and when I finally laid down, there was no buzzing phone, no pit in my stomach, just the kind of silence that feels earned. And I slept, not just closed my eyes, kind of sleep, but the kind I hadn't had since I was maybe 15, before secrets and guilt and family obligations took over every corner of my life. I thought this whole thing would leave me wrecked. Instead, I felt whole. The next few mornings passed in a quiet rhythm, the kind that feels heavier than silence itself. I brewed coffee, cleaned the same countertops twice, and watched the light shift across my living room, without realizing I hadn't said a word out loud in hours. Then on the third morning, as I returned from the market with a small bag of groceries tucked against my hip, my phone buzzed. It wasn't a text. It was a voicemail notification. The number wasn't familiar, but it carried a government tone that made the hairs on my neck lift slightly. I stood still by the kitchen counter as I played it. Good morning, this is Special Agent McMillan with the IRS Identity Protection Division. We flagged a suspicious pattern of large financial transfers associated with your Social Security number. This includes activity that may involve unauthorized usage by close associates or family members. Please return this call at your earliest convenience. This is not a collection call. I pressed my palm to the counter, cold, solid, real. After a moment, I moved deliberately, put the eggs in the fridge, arranged. The milk slid off my shoes. Then I sat down with the folder I'd built over the past week. Every printout, every bank statement, every screenshot. I wasn't going to let fear crawl in now. The callback didn't take long. Agent McMillan had a calm professional voice, direct, but not cruel. Yes, ma'am. Thank you for returning the call. We received a fraud alert through your bank's escalation team. We're currently verifying whether certain charges and transfers were made with your knowledge or consent. We've also flagged a vacation booking in Maui, connected to multiple debit authorizations using your name. Were you aware of this usage? I gave him the date, the time, the last 4 digits of the card. I did not authorize the vacation. I didn't book the resort. And I definitely didn't spend $19,000 on it, I understand. And have you spoken to the individuals involved? I hesitated. They know I've reported it. They haven't contacted me since. There was a pause. I could hear him typing. We will be issuing formal notifications of investigation to the parties linked to the transaction. You'll receive an acknowledgement shortly. In the meantime, any assets linked to this usage may be frozen as part of due process. I thanked him, hung up, and sat quietly with the phone in my lap. My fingers trembled, not from fear, but from something like release, not revenge, not even justice, just confirmation. Far away across time zones and oceans, the ripples began to land like hammers. At the resort in Maui, Uncle Keith was at the reception desk, pulling out thick envelopes of cash with a mix of arrogance and desperation. Look, I'll cover it. Just get us back into the room. The resort manager, polite but unmoved, gestured to the screen behind the desk. I'm sorry, sir, but due to a flagged federal inquiry associated with the original payment account, we are prohibited from accepting further payments, cash or otherwise, until verification is completed. What does that even mean? Sophie asked, her voice rising. We're just trying to pay. It means, the manager said evenly, that the suite is under federal review. Your belongings have been moved to secure storage. You may access them from the lobby until the matter is resolved. Keith turned red. Linda's face twisted. She did this, she spat, jabbing a finger at the air like I might appear. From the palm trees that snake, she set us up. Sophie sat down on the edge of a leather bench, pale and silent. They said, possible charges. What does that even mean? No one answered her. Back home, I received an email from the IRS within the hour. As per federal guidelines, the disputed funds are being temporarily recovered, pending final investigation. Thank you for your cooperation. I closed the laptop softly and leaned back on the couch, staring out the window. The world looked the same. The ski, the quiet street, the neighbor's sprinkler clicking across his lawn, but inside something had shifted. Later that afternoon, Linda's husband Todd was in a business meeting when his phone buzzed. It wasn't a call, it was a bank alert. His joint account with Linda had been frozen due to an identity fraud alert linked to an ongoing federal investigation. He stood up mid-sentence, yanked the conference room door open, and stormed out. Everyone at the table turned to watch him leave, confusion rippling through the room. Back in Maui, the resort manager calmly addressed the growing scene in the lobby. You may remain in the public areas until 6 p.m. tonight. After that, guests not attached to an active reservation will be asked to leave the property. Linda, never good at being told, no, screamed into her phone. Arlena, you better pick up. You better fix this. This is your fault. But I didn't pick up. I saw the call. Then I hit block that evening. I took a walk through downtown, letting the rhythm of my steps calm the buzz in my chest. The sun was dipping behind the buildings, casting long shadows on the sidewalk. Outside the bakery, a woman sat at a small table with her 2 daughters, all 3 laughing over flaky croissants and hot cocoa. The youngest had chocolate on her chin. The mother wiped it gently and smiled. I stopped, just watched. There was a pinch in my chest. I hadn't expected. Not grief exactly, more like a longing I didn't know how to name. For something simple, for closeness, without control, for care, without price tags. I whispered to myself, almost too soft to hear. It was never really about the money, it was about being believed, about being seen. And now at least someone was listening. The day after the IRS voicemail, I thought the worst had already landed. The condo was quiet again. Finally, I'd sent over the last bit of documentation to the investigator, updated my bank password, and even deleted the emergency contacts I used to have listed as Mom, Linda, and Keith. I'd just finished folding the clean laundry when I noticed the envelope. It was sticking halfway under my front door, the way someone in a hurry might slide a takeout menu or an unwanted flyer. But this wasn't junk. I knew that handwriting instantly slanted, oddly elegant, and somehow aggressive, even in cursive. My mother's. There was no return address, just my name, not even a dear. I sat down on the edge of the couch, hands motionless on the paper. For a long moment, I didn't open it. I just stared, pulled steady, but low. Like my body knew whatever was inside would dig into old scars, and maybe even make a few new ones. When I finally tore the flap open and pulled the paper out, it was a single sheet. No hi, no date. Just the first line, written in dark blue ink. I always knew you'd turn on us. I didn't flinch, but my fingers tightened slightly at the corners. Her handwriting moved quickly after that, like she had waited years for this page to become her courtroom. You always thought you were better than the rest of us. Quiet, observant, playing the good girl while keeping a mental scoreboard. Well, congratulations. You finally won. You got your show, you got your power, and it read less like a letter and more like a closing statement from a woman who'd made up her mind long ago. She reminded me of the money she lent me for my college textbooks 20 years ago, of the time I forgot her birthday during finals week, of every small perceived betrayal compiled like a case file. Then the line that changed the temperature of the room. We did what we did because we thought you'd always forgive us. I stopped there. My throat tightened in a way I wasn't expecting. Not from grief. From clarity. Because somewhere in her I think she believed that that forgiveness was my function. That I was soft enough to bend back into place, no matter how many times I'd been snapped. But then the next paragraph surprised me. There was a time. You used to bring me flowers. Remember the lilacs? I still remember the smell. You cut them from the neighbor's bushes when you were little. You didn't even ask. You just knew I liked them. I didn't expect the shift. I hadn't thought about those flowers in years. The memory hit like soft thunder. I was 11. It was after my father left. The house had gone quiet. Air heavy with a silence that pressed against your chest when you walked in. I remember standing at the window watching my mother sit at the kitchen table, her eyes fixed on something I couldn't see. She wasn't crying aloud, just leaking sorrow. I'd gone outside without a word, crossed into the neighbor's yard, barefoot, and clipped a small bundle of lilacs with my school scissors. I brought them in, didn't even put them in a vase, just wrapped them in a paper towel and set them beside her coffee cup. She touched them, and for just a second, something in her face softened. I was a kid. I didn't know then what grief was supposed to look like, but I knew it didn't belong to just her. The letter's final line was uneven, like her hand had trembled. I suppose I was always better at receiving than giving. I read it twice, then once more, and then I folded the paper slowly, deliberately, like pressing down a page in a book I didn't want to reread too quickly. I didn't cry. I slid the letter into the old wooden box under my bed, the same box I'd once vowed to throw out, but I never had. Inside were a few faded photos. Me in pigtails, my dad holding me at the beach, Polaroid of my third-grade science fair pictures. I thought I'd burned years ago in a fit of anger, but something in me had pulled back then. Just like now, I placed the letter on top and closed the lid gently. Standing by the window, I saw a young couple walking down the street, laughing, their toddler riding their shoulders, her little hands tugging at her father's ears. The sound of their joy drifted faintly upward. I let out a long breath. This wasn't peace. Not yet, maybe not even close. But it wasn't the old weight anymore either. It was the beginning of something lighter. Not forgiveness, but recognition of who I was, of what I'd carried, and what I didn't have to carry anymore. But that night, as I logged in to finalize the fraud report, something unexpected flashed across my screen. I had just set down the mug of peppermint tea I'd been nursing since dinner. The letter from my mother still sat folded on the kitchen table, as if it were waiting to be read again. I didn't have the strength for that. Not yet. Instead, I moved to the desk in the corner of the living room. The lights outside flickered. Summer storms were dancing somewhere beyond the city skyline, but inside it was quiet. For once, silence didn't feel empty. It felt earned. My laptop hummed to life. Olivia's face appeared in the Zoom window a moment later. Calm as always, sharp in her wire-rimmed glasses, her auburn hair tucked back. No nonsense, the kind of lawyer who never forgot a detail and never flinched from bad news. "Evening, Arena," she said, adjusting her headphones. "You ready for the update?" I nodded, tightening the robe around me. "Go ahead. The bank has reviewed everything you submitted. They've accepted the claim, full chargeback approved, including all the luxury resort transactions and flights I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. That's a relief. That's not all." Olivia clicked something off screen. The IRS responded. "They confirmed your family's charitable trust triggered a federal review. Based on what we sent, they've opened an audit." She paused, watching me closely. "They're not playing games anymore." I said, "No, they're not." Olivia's expression shifted. "And neither should you." Then she flipped the screen. A file appeared labeled in simple white text. Audio Evidence 1. Dawn, MP3. She clicked play. It started with laughter, too loud, too familiar. My brother Grant's voice came through first, raspy and smug. "She's clueless. Seriously, she thinks we're paying out of pocket." But hey, if the universe gives you a gift, then another voice. His wife Isla, high-pitched, gleeful. "Exactly, it's not like she'll even notice. Her card goes straight to rewards anyway. First-class flights and spa packages. Feels like karma finally got it right." They both laughed. I sat there blinking. The travel agent's voice came next. Less amused, cautious. "So you're using someone else's card to book all this silence." Then Grant again. "Just call it a family favor." Hila chimed in. "She'll forgive us. She always does." I didn't move. My fingers stayed frozen over the keyboard. The audacity, the entitlement, the way they laughed like I was a joke. A bank, a fool. Olivia let the silence sit before speaking. "That audio came from the travel agency after your report flagged the transactions. The agent submitted it voluntarily, said your sister-in-law acted like the card holder, provided the number over the phone, matched the name on your billing address." I looked up. "Do I get to keep the file?" Olivia nodded. "Of course we'll submit it as evidence, but you're entitled to a copy." I sat back, slowly letting the chair support me. My heartbeat wasn't racing. It was steady, clear. "They'll be subpoenaed?" I asked. By Friday, I reached for a pen and scribbled the date down on a Post-it, sticking it to the edge of my screen. "Can I be there when they hear it?" Olivia tilted her head, then smiled. "Actually, yes. If we request a mediated settlement conference via Zoom, you'll be present. Cameras on, they won't know you're joining until it starts." The image of their faces when they heard the playback flickered in my mind. No yelling, no accusations, just the truth served raw. I nodded. "Let's make it happen." Olivia's tone turned professional again. "I'll handle the paperwork. Everything's logged and timestamped." As the call ended, I clicked over to a private folder I'd created earlier that week. I uploaded the file, renaming it with quiet precision, "The Truth." It joined another document already there. A photo of my torn-up birthday card from 3 years ago, the one they sent late. No gift, just a signed message that read, "Hope you're finally learning to be less dramatic." That folder wasn't for revenge. It wasn't for nostalgia either. It was something else entirely. Proof that I hadn't imagined any of it. That I wasn't crazy or bitter or overly sensitive. That what happened really happened. And now it was on record. I shut the lid of the laptop, slowly stood up, and walked toward the kitchen, stretching my neck. The night had grown cooler. Rain tapped lightly at the windows. I reached for the old radio by the sink and turned the dial. Low jazz filled the room, soft and steady. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like I had to brace myself for the next blow. No one was coming through that door to yell. No one was barging in with guilt or accusations or fake apologies. It was just me. And that strange, still silence that didn't feel like loneliness. It felt like space to breathe, to rebuild, to choose what I'd let in and what I'd leave out permanently. From somewhere in the hallway, a draft caught the edge of the envelope. My mother's letter came in. It fluttered. Slightly, I didn't reach for it. Not yet, tomorrow maybe. Tonight I had other things to get ready for, because come Friday they'd hear the truth, and I'd be right there watching. The sun had dipped low behind the trees outside my window, casting a burnt orange hue across my living room walls. I just finished labeling the final audio file The Truth and saved it to a private drive. My laptop fan purred, the only sound left in the quiet condo. I stood stretched and walked slowly to the kitchen to make a cup of chamomile tea. My body was calm, but my hand still remembered the tremor of hearing my brother laugh while he joked about robbing me. I didn't cry. Not anymore. 2 weeks passed with little fanfare. The bank moved fast. So did the IRS. Olivia had kept everything coordinated like a conductor of an orchestra no one saw coming. And now the curtain was about to rise. That Thursday morning, I dressed with intention, steel gray blazer, soft cream blouse, and a pair of simple pearl studs I hadn't worn in years. I tied my hair back neatly, dabbed on a natural gloss, and opened the Zoom link Olivia had emailed me the night before. The screen loaded, and there they were. My mother was in her usual oversized sweater, trying too hard to look casual. My brother wore a polo shirt, jaw clenched like he'd just tasted something sour. His wife, hair freshly blown out, face full of makeup, was already scrolling on her phone. They didn't recognize me at first, not immediately. Then Olivia joined. "Good morning, everyone," she said with that cool clarity of someone who'd been here before. So the mediator, a woman in her 60s, with the air of a non-nonsense school principal, cleared her throat. "Let's begin. We're here to mediate the complaint filed by Miss Arlena Fairchild concerning unauthorized financial activity and resulting damages. All parties present." My mother blinked rapidly. "Arlena, honey, you look different." I didn't respond, I just nodded once. My brother leaned forward, squinting at the camera. "Wait, you're the one who filed all this?" "I am," I said, voice steady. My mom pressed her hands together as if in prayer. "We thought you'd understand family helps family. That's always been the rule." I tilted my head by stealing $19.00 from my account and mocking me behind my back. She flinched. My brother tried to cut in, but the mediator raised her hand. "Miss Fairchild has the floor." I inhaled once, just enough to let the air settle inside me. Then clicked the screen share button. The recording played crystal clear. My brother's voice boomed out, careless and cocky. "She's clueless. We'll just say the travel agent made a mistake, or call it a gift from the universe. I mean, she barely checks her statements." Laughter followed hers, my sister-in-law's. The room was still even across virtual boxes. "I didn't bring this for drama," I said softly. "I brought it because this was never about money. It was about the moment you decided I was disposable." My brother tried to interrupt. "Okay, look, that wasn't serious." Muted Olivia had anticipated that I turned toward the mediator. "I'm ready for Olivia to present the settlement terms." Olivia didn't miss a beat. Full restitution of the stolen 193752s. An additional $7.500 for damages, a written apology, acknowledging deceit and emotional harm, and a signed agreement relinquishing any future claims to Miss Fairchild's portion of the family trust. The mediator nodded. Failure to agree will result in escalation. The IRS is currently monitoring this call. So is the bank's legal team. Silence. Not the awkward kind, the kind that follows after all the masks drop. Finally, my mother whispered. "We'll sign." Her voice cracked on the word sign. Not out of sorrow, but out of defeat. I didn't smile. I didn't lean forward. I just looked at her. Really looked, and saw the woman who once packed me bologna sandwiches and tucked notes inside. Now completely unrecognizable. "I'll wait for the signed documents." Olivia said. "Well, process them by end of day." The mediator confirmed. That concludes this session. I hovered my mouse over the red Leave Meeting button, then paused. You didn't just take my money, I said. You took my trust, and you'll never get it back. Click, the screen went black. I sat there, motionless for a minute. Not from grief, but from the weight that had lifted. After years of swallowing bitterness, I had finally tasted resolve. And it wasn't cold. It was quiet, solid. Outside, the last of the day's light stretched across the buildings. I walked out to my small patio, watching the breeze move the neighbors' wind chimes, just enough to stir sound, not clatter. Then came the buzz of my phone, a message from the gallery director. We'd love to showcase your ceramics in the upcoming spring collection. Let us know if you're available. I closed my eyes. My palms still carried the faint scent of clay from this morning's work. I walked back in, stepping over the drop cloth and half-finished bowls lining the floor. I looked around, not at what was missing, but at what was mine. Finally quiet, I whispered,